Hello, everyone. Good evening. Our topic of discussion today is John Paul II, his thoughts on the mission of Laity and its special relevance to life, and especially the forum is for life, isn't it? So, for life or pro-life themes. That's the point of discussion. John Paul II, especially after the last month's canonization, he is very much in our memories. I have to talk a little bit about him before I go further. Now, John Paul II, as you know, is 264th Pope. And we remember, I think maybe many of us will, in our life, one of the high points of world history would be his demise. How in 2005 he passed away. I think it was on April 2nd. And his funeral on April 8th, when the whole crowd, I think 300,000 people gathered. Also, the maximum number of world dignitaries, statesmen gathered on that day. And on April 8th, people were calling out Santo Subito, isn't it? Make him a saint immediately. That's what they all said. They all chanted out Santo Subito. The reason was he was naturally one of the high points of 20th century and the 21st century, one of the leading world leaders. And we know some of his achievements. Perhaps he's credited to have ended communism, which for a century ruled the roost in the world politics. Then his teachings were, quite famous, quite memorable. He was especially we remember how he continued the Second Vatican II teachings. He brought out the CCC, the modern Catholic Catechism, after so many centuries. The Catechism was revised, or the canon law was revised. So many papal documents that came, so many books that he wrote, all made him a famous teacher in the history of the world. I think some of us would fondly remember the Great Jubilee preparation and the celebration of the Great Jubilee. 10 years preparation, the Jubilee itself was a very big event, the 2000th year. The 2000th year of the birth of Jesus was very, very big event organized by John Paul II. Again, many of us would remember the World Youth Days, which is still continuing. He began the World Youth Days. The biggest one, I think, was Manila, where 4 million people gathered. That was the largest gathering of humanity in the history of this universe. This is a World Youth Day. Then again, many of his famous teachings, he guarded the traditional Catholic doctrine in a time of great storms and great problems. Many other faiths, Catholic, Christian faiths, were going away from the traditional teachings. He guarded the security of life, the importance of life, spoke against abortion, euthanasia. Even he fought against homosexuality being accepted by the world. Then women priesthood. So many other things he stood firm. So naturally, he is loved by the people. And then, in spite of his perhaps more orthodox stance, he was very much loved by young people all over the world. Actually, that's the reason why perhaps today you all are gathered here. Now, I'd like to go to perhaps today's theme. That is, today we are focusing more on Laity, the Laity and the mission of the Laity. Let me see. Okay, I'd like to share the screen with you. Yeah. Now, today we are asking a question: who are the Laity? John Paul II's famous document, Christi Fidelis Laici, that summed up the Vatican II discussions on the laity, the mission of laity in the modern world. Then again, most of the teachings on lay people was summed up in this document, Christi Fidelis Laici, the lay Christian faithful, the lay faithful, the lay faithful. This came out in 1988. Now, this reiterates the Vatican II pronouncement on laity, a definition of laity. It says the unique character of their vocation, which is in a special way to seek the kingdom of God by engaging in temporal affairs, that means worldly affairs, and ordering them according to the plan of God. I think it becomes very clear that the lay mission is to live in the ordinary world. The secular world is the place in which the laity receive their call from God. There they are called by God to fulfill their mission. So that is the, I think, speciality of laity. This place, that means the world, this place is treated and presented in dynamic terms. And I'm quoting from Christi Fidelis Laici again. The lay people live in the world, that is, in every one of the secular professions and occupations. Naturally, most of us, either I'm a teacher, some of you are engineers or housewives. So they live in the ordinary circumstances of their family and social life, from which the very fabric of their existence is woven. So here, I think this is a foundation of the mission of laity that JP2 has been talking about. Lay people, they are the persons who live an ordinary life in the world. They study, they work, they form relationships as friends, professionals, members of society, cultures, etc. However, their condition is not simply an external and environmental framework. Now, when you are saying laity, this is true of any other person. But then a little more than that. But a reality destined to find in Jesus Christ the fullness of its meaning. I think some of you would be either part of Jesus Youth or some other movements. Naturally, this makes the difference. We live in this world of studies, work, etc. But with Jesus Christ, we live this world and find a difference in this world. Okay. He chose to lead the life of an ordinary craftsman of his own time and place. Jesus was also like this. He lived like an ordinary carpenter and lived in this world as an ordinary man. Now, I go to my next part, laity in the church and the modern world. Something very interesting that I talk about, or you can find in Christi Fidelis Laici, is two temptations that the lay people are facing. Pope mentions there are two very important temptations that modern lay people are facing. Sometimes I ask the groups, what are these temptations that lay people face? Some of them would say that making money. Some of them would say that our carnal desires, greed, or many other things they would say. But I think if you have not seen it, you may not guess what these temptations are. Pope is saying there are very, very important two temptations that we all, the modern laity, of course, they are faithful, the lay faithful face. What are they? One the temptation of being so strongly interested in church services and tasks that some fail to become actively engaged in their responsibilities in the professional, social, cultural, and political world. We become so involved in church life that we don't have time, or we fail to get deeply involved in our research, our work, or creativity in my teaching. Or I don't have time for political discussions. I don't study culture. I don't watch any media. I think this is a temptation, Pope is saying. So this is the first temptation that is saying. That is, we become too interested in church services, perhaps too interested in our organization, our movement, that we fail to become actively engaged in the responsibilities of professional, social, and cultural and political world. Now, it so happened that some of you know that I was involved in politics a bit. I stood for elections in India. The parliamentary elections are over just now. All are waiting for the results after a month-long or even more elections they are waiting. In 2004, I stood for elections from my parliamentary constituency as a candidate of Congress party. Many people ask me, how could you do that? You are a Christian, you are a Catholic, you are active, and then how could you be active in politics? So how is it possible to join together this political involvement and your faith involvement? Perhaps one quotation that forced me, perhaps it's very difficult for a person, some of us, to face that culture of a political culture. But perhaps this remark by Pope John Paul II, that the temptation of being too much in the church so that we don't have time for other activities. But the Pope is saying our field is world. Our field is this secular reality, finance or media. There we have to be there, of course. We have to not just be there, not to lose our values. That is perhaps the second temptation. Pope speaks of the second temptation, the temptation of legitimizing the unwarranted separation of faith from life. We say that faith is one area, life is another area. Unneeded separation. We separate between faith and life. That is a separation of gospel's acceptance from the actual living of the gospel in various situations in the world. We receive the gospel, or perhaps we attend retreats, we attend Holy Mass, but then we don't live, perhaps closely link the retreat with my life at home, my marital life, or my political life, my other interests. We somehow separate. We feel in a way a little bad that I spend too much time in one. Surely in the world. We feel bad that, or people give us a guilt feeling that, that we are spending too much time for worldly matters. This is an unneeded separation. The Pope is saying, that's what the Bible says also, we'll go more into it. Both these are closely integrated. Spirituality and world. Spirit and flesh. These have to be closely integrated. If we cannot do that, it's a temptation. Now, continuing. All these are from Christopher Laity, I'm quoting. The vocation of the lay faithful to holiness implies that life according to spirit expresses itself in a particular way in their involvement in temporal affairs. So holiness is properly getting involved in worldly matters and in their participation in earthly activities. This is a quotation from Pope again. Because St. Paul says, this is St. Paul's quotation from Colossians 3:17. Pope is quoting, whatever you do, Whether you're cooking, whether you're having fun, whether you're playing, you go for coming to America. I was finding your baseball or other uh, American football, whatever you do, in word or in deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him. So this ability to be thankful when you have a game, when you are involved in so many other things, when you are making your investment, when you are doing your work, this is holiness for lay person. Our holiness is not just running away from the world. That's what Pope John Paul is saying. Applying the apostles' words to the lay faithful, the Pope, he says he's talking about the council on laity. The council affirms neither family concerns nor other secular affairs should be excluded from their religious program of life. In our religious program, all these family, secular affairs, our club, our other interests, these have to be there. We cannot run away from entertainment club. We cannot run away from watching movies. But it has to be animated by the Spirit of Christ. That's the mission of laity. Now I go to my next part. Mission of laity and commitment to life. Now, so we are called, lay people are called, John Paul II says, to be active in all kinds of worldly matters. We should have a prayer life, we should have active church life, but that church life should be closely integrated with all our interests, all our talents. We remember Matthew 25 where he talks of the talents. We are not supposed to bury these talents. Maybe to to appreciate literature, appreciate music. These talents cannot be buried. Now, mission of laity and the commitment to life. Again, another very interesting point, interesting phase that came up with John Paul II. Culture of life as against culture of death. Of course, America has got the happy memories. John Paul II, in 1993, World Youth Day in Denver. It was at that time he denounced abortion and euthanasia, stating that the culture of life means respect for nature and protection of God's work of creation. In a very special way, it means respect for human life from the first moment of conception until its natural end. So today's world, it is there is a culture of death is growing. Against that, a culture of life has to be promoted. Of course, this has got its roots in Didache, the early teaching for the church. Also, definitely, many of the indications of the gospel. But in the last century, the Pope very powerfully began to use this phrase, culture of life and culture of death. Perhaps in our circle also, we are denouncing this culture of death, and we are, as lay people, the ordinary affairs of the world, as Pope John Paul II says, we are trying to promote a culture of life. Again, he returned to the theme in April 1995 through the very famous encyclical Evangelium Vitae, Gospel of Life. We know that this is a follow-up to Paul VI, Humanae Vitae, where he was talking about life, importance of life. In our present social context, marked by a dramatic struggle between the culture of life and the culture of death, there is need to develop a deep critical sense capable of discerning true values and authentic needs. So there is a need today really to have a deep critical sense to understand what is the true values and what are the authentic needs. Some of us are very familiar with this theology of the body, where again, Pope's teaching that led through years of teaching. Pope led the whole world in truly discerning what are the true values and true needs, values of life that stands against values of death. Sometimes values of death can come in very tricky forms. That is needed for us to discern. That's what the Pope was saying. And now, some of the issues that are included in the description of the culture of life. What is culture of life? Of course, we are familiar with it's an opposition to abortion, opposition to sterilization, opposition to human cloning, opposition to contraception. Many of these things are becoming very popular, and opposition to human embryonic stem cell and fetal research, euthanasia opposing, or this idea opposes murder and suicide, the growing opposition to capital punishment even. Then again, opposition to unjust war. Then again, positively promotion of agape, love and charity. We join in the suffering of other people. We find time, set apart our time and resources for those in need. This is a culture of life. Again, promotion of matrimony, maternity, fatherhood, life, chastity, fidelity, and virtue. We know very well. Pope John Paul II, of course, in Christi Laity also, he speaks very much. The family is a place where a human being begins life, formed to love, or the life is nurtured. Perhaps no other beings have families as human beings have. Maternity, fatherhood, chastity, fidelity, virtue, all these promoting all these great values and styles are part of promoting a culture of life, Pope said. Then, of course, organ donation. So, variety of these trends of culture of life the Pope was championing. Naturally, many of the pro-life movements are, in a way, this great new evangelization that the Pope spoke of. That definitely, that was another big theme of Pope John Paul II, new evangelization. Sometimes I think the two themes that he developed so much from the Second Vatican Council was the mission of the laity and the new evangelization. That means bringing this good message of Christ to today, new in its fervor, new in its approach, new in its method. So, of course, this new evangelization, this pro-life, perhaps I really congratulate you all for this wonderful initiative called For Life. It is truly bringing this message of Christ in a new way to today's world. I go to the last part of my little presentation. Laity called to be missionaries in the world, not word, world, and champions of life. We're called to be missionaries. Now, JP2 enunciated an incarnational approach to life and mission. What is an incarnational approach? That means spirit in body. Karna means body. So, an incarnational approach. So, this incarnational approach is perhaps seen, we know, word became flesh and dwelt among us. Then John again says in the first letter, this is how we recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. So he was speaking of this incarnational spirituality, unity between inner life and secular commitment. So in his teachings on theology of the body and family life, he spoke of the conjugal spirituality that discovers God's mystery revealed through our bodies and through the marital union itself. Very beautifully, how the love, how family life, especially the life between husband and wife and the marital union between husband and wife, these are all beautiful arena of holiness and spirituality, the Pope could say. Naturally, in his words, all this is leading to a joyful life, a life in its fullness, then a life that leads to eternity. Let's really thank God for John Paul II, who in modern times challenged lay people to be active in their personal life and in the world. At the same time, he challenged the lay people to be champions of life in a personal life as well as in the world. Thank you. I think we must go to a time of interaction, maybe talking about JP2, your own joyful things about JP2, or asking something about some of the matters. You're welcome. Thank you.
Currently, we are unmuting it.
Okay. So I think we don't have much time. So take time and talk. I too would like to see your face and hear your voices. Come on. Yeah.
Hi, Edezhath.
Yeah.
I just want to.
Who's there talking? Introduce and talk.
My name is Tovino. I want to break the ice. That's why.
Yeah, thank you.
Edezhath, did you see any difference in the approach to life in the Catholic Church in India and United States?
Very good. Tricky question. But one thing I've seen is that in India, perhaps a culture of life is part of the very culture. Other trends are slowly coming up. But then in the United States, perhaps very, vibrant groups that think about and take initiative are more in the United States. I was hearing about your pro-life initiatives, pro-life rallies done nationwide in different places. The other day I was in many of the cities. Some of them are saying this is from where what pro-life march begins, and this is where it ends, and how people participate. In India, still it is in a very small way that talking about these things in public happens. Perhaps here challenges are more. At the same time, the profits are more. People who speak about it and with a very, very good clarity that speak about it is much more. I was watching 2 days back the Black Mass, the discussion. What discussion it created. And perhaps some of the responses were very touching. Even I was very much touched by the response of the president herself. So I think here darkness is more and light is perhaps more brighter. India, it is more in the gray area. Do you agree? What do you say? What do you say?
I also think that we need to create some awareness in India. Here, people are more aware about pro-life and even the life in the end stage of life.
Yeah.
I think that area not yet touched in India. So and medicine is also not. We cannot compare the medicine status of India and United States at this moment. So that's maybe in the future we also, as a for life ministry, we need to work on end of life situations too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I have a comment to make that in many areas, United States is taking leadership today. Now, if you look back culturally, one nation, no, one time, sometimes I was doing research on different cultures. So Portuguese, or in each age, English, maybe various other countries were taking initiative. Today, perhaps on the forefront is the United States in so many areas. You from the United States can do a lot in taking leadership and doing very creative work in this field in different parts of the world, India, and in other parts of the world also. Relevant, creative initiatives to promote life, to stand for the culture of life. So, challenging that way as well. More voices.
We have 3 more
Sometimes I think even JP2's end was old, and we remember his tortured face in the last phase of his life. Perhaps it was good that everyone who decided that then he continued to the old age to serve the church. Perhaps another great witness to the sacredness of life. Perhaps, yeah. Did somebody start talking?
We have 2 more minutes. If anybody wants to share anything, they can do even that.
I was also hurrying to give you time. Yeah.
I guess we are reaching towards the end of the daily.
Okay, less than a minute. Thank you very much. Nice that we could spend this time. May the Lord bless each one of you, and may the Lord bless your families, and help you to promote life and live a life of fullness. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.